Another episode, Chaos Meets Creation podcast. Not much in terms of housekeeping, except the rate of art production is going to go down. This is due to me starting a new full time job. I was supposed to start this past Monday, but due to some family situations, which we'll get into later on, I've deferred the start date to this coming Monday. Also, on top of working between 10 to 12 hours Monday through Friday, I'll also have to be studying for a certification exam, so not a lot of free time to be coming up. We'll see how that goes. All right, let's jump in. Things you didn't know that were amazing. We're going to start with a book that is in my top three of all time. There's not a lot that you can really apply to your daily life. Referring back to the Rise of Superman, which, like, it's, to me at least, all perspective shifting into how do I, gear my life towards things that are going to be most fulfilling, get me into these flow states that I can enjoy, but also drive me forward. But there's so much data in this book, Scale by Jeffrey West, that, I think it forcefully pushes your brain in all directions, like outward, growing it because of the just sheer amount of data that you didn't know existed about things. And it's just like, even thinking back, like, I need to reread it, but it's almost like one of those books that should also be grouped in with, this is a book that if wanted to learn more about evolution, this would be a cool addendum, in the fact that it's pure math. Like, it's pure math when studying biology. So, and there's more data and tables than he even writes in this really big book. But it's very readable. It's big, but it's like you get done and you're like, man, I can't believe I plowed through that so quickly. And it's just like there's flow rates of blood vessels, there's ATP production, there's you know it, some of the things we'll get into, I don't want to spoil them now because I had to restart and find all these places because I thought I bookmarked things and then I couldn't find the specific topics I was trying to go into. But things that you've never heard of, such as doubling in mass of an animal, does not mean that the bigger animal needs 100% more resources, nutrients. There's actually a conservation of, like, efficiency. When doubling size, you actually only need 75% more nutrients to survive and live. And so, like, it talks about how there's these weird phenomena that just exist when scaling animals, and how, like, all mammals are scaled versions of this theoretical, ideal mammal. So you scale it smaller to make it like a shrew, you scale it up to make it a blue whale, and how all mammals, except for humans, once, like, modern medicine came about, like, all mammals are basically linearly plotted across this mass and lifespan graph that says you have, on average, 86,000 heartbeats per lifetime. And your metabolic rate then basically dictates how long it'll take you to, exhaust that gas tank of 86,000 heartbeats. And that shrews live less than, a blue whale, because their heart is just like beating so fast and they're turning over so quickly. Whereas as you get bigger, you get this efficiency of scale. You need less resources for your cellular respiration to occur, and that slows everything down, creating a longer lifetime. And so, like, that's interesting in itself. But then you can carry that over. Like, there are these ideal forms of cities. Like all cities are basically patterned after this theoretical city that says as your city grows, you need, once you hit this threshold, you need this many gas stations, you need this many miles of road. And it'll also say, once your population gets to a certain size, you'll expect certain amounts of Nobel Prizes or whatever it is, how many miles of electrical line. And, these things you never think about, but like he lays out because of the law of large numbers. When you have a big enough sample size, you start to see that everything can be pooled, and then you can sample it to approximate the mean of all these different things, and then that's where you start building this average or theoretical mammal, this theoretical city that all these other things are basically trying to get to so that they can be optimized, because life is trying to optimize, cities are trying to be built in an optimal way, all these things. Well, so there are a couple things that I really like that stood out to me, and some of them are really like, we've got so much to talk about, they're just like paragraphs. Others are spelled out a little bit more in chapters, but like as far as health, I'm a big proponent of learning about all aspects of preventative medicine, and being active, having a good lifestyle, good diet to basically prevent disease and live my best life for as long as I can. Well, I had heard calorie deficit kind of diets are good and beneficial for various reasons, but this one, through studies of rats, really spells out like the extent that you can push it and see benefits. And it was like, there's a graph that I'll explain in words, but there's a little paragraph. Let's see what it says. The theory predicts that if you consistently decrease your food intake by 10%, you could live for up to 10% longer, up to 10 years or more. Well, in the graph that they show where they experimented on caloric deficits with rats, I think there was a different, might be this book, might be a different one, but like they even gave rats predisposition to the diseases in some experiments, and they went through caloric deficits and normal diets, and the caloric deficit rats like basically never had the genes turned on to even like experience the cancers and whatnot that they were predisposed to have, whereas the regular diet, normal amount of food, they would eat, they'd get it, and then they'd die. And like some of these rats would just like live healthy lives, but like, so they give various groups of, there's a fully fed, there's a 10% calorie reduction, 50% and 60% calorie reduction. And basically the fully fed rats in the group, they live a certain amount. And like we said, 10% decrease, you get a 10% boost in lifespan. But the 50 and 60% caloric deficit groups saw, let's see, on average, a 41%, I think it says, no, basically 50%, I think is what it looks like. Basically a 50% increase in lifespan, and the 60% caloric reduction saw almost a 60% lengthen in your lifespan. And it's like, at surface level, everyone I've ever talked to about caloric deficit or like, a restrictive diet where you don't eat certain things that, over time have a, detrimental impact on your health, they're like, yeah, but, you're not as happy for those extra 30 years because you're miserable the whole time. You're hungry, you don't get to eat what you want. And it's like, yeah, sure, that could be the way you see it. I mean, again, for me, I feel like I'm always in a caloric deficit because I do fast a lot. I don't give in to hunger pangs a lot. And it's mostly because I've experimented with these things. Like, just acknowledging that there's a nerve, the vagal nerve that runs from my digestive system to my brain that controls serotonin as well. That's basically trying to tell me when I have cravings, When you fast for 24 hours, 48 hours, some people fast for longer just to test themselves. Like, those hunger pangs go away. Your body gets in sync with what it's doing, and then goes into like heightened states of focus, survivorship. Like, we're gonna start burning our own fat to survive now, and like, I don't know, those, it feels like those are the way your machine is supposed to work. Is you don't overconsume, you don't give in to like cravings, and just there was a time where I tried the eat one meal a day thing. It was very hard, just because I can't in one sitting. I have trouble eating one full like ingestion of food. Like, it just, I can't prepare enough and then eat all of it, and then some of it would go to waste, and I felt bad. But like, I usually eat about 2 meals a day, and like, I enjoy it, and I enjoy being in sync with my body because of it. Like, just knowing when, am I actually dying? Am I actually starving, or is it in my head? And like, is this just something that something is signaling, or am I in danger, kind of thing? And I think the better you get in tune with your body, the just more success you have with maneuvering through life. And I don't feel like a lot of people, like, even just, I was thinking about this the other day, and a lot of these thoughts come when I'm driving in cars, because I get to like sit and kind of meditate on like thoughts while I'm driving. And it's just like, we have this very powerful brain, right? And like 90% of the things that we do, we don't even have to consciously think about. What I mean by that is, when I want to say a word or a sentence, or I need to move something, I don't have to say inwardly, okay, move my hand move my foot to kick this soccer ball, and run and run and run. And then you just, you know what you want to do, and your body executes it, right? And in that sense, there's like this black box of your brain doing things that are complex, that you almost only at a big 10,000 mile view have to just summarize. If you break down the components of, okay, uh, I need to be on balance. I need to shift my weight to my left if I'm a right foot dominant kicker. I need to set my foot in a certain place depending on how I want to kick this ball. I need to bend back my leg a certain amount depending on how much how hard I'm trying to kick this ball. I need to position my ankle and my foot in a certain way depending on how I want to strike the ball, the placement of where I want to strike this ball, and it's moving, so I need to coordinate that with the movement of the ball, and then based on the people in front of me and the goalie, where I need to kick the ball, but also how quickly I need to make that release and that trigger happen, because the defender, if I just keep charging up, like on Mario Tennis, you keep charging up a big shot, like, you give people more time to prepare, or come in and like cut you off at the pass, kind of thing. And that's more, I guess, a different video game. But if you break all the components down into simple movements, such as kicking a soccer ball, like, there's a lot that has to be calculated and done, and you do it automatically, right? And the same thing about thinking words. Like, you think in words because seemingly that's how you process. But if you also try to take it in, and I think we talked about this before, there seem to be, at least in my limited understanding of how I interface with my brain, certain neurons and neural pathways that are linked to the words and the thoughts, and then maybe the images that are aligned to certain memories or whatever. But like, if you think about a song that you get stuck in your head, you're not consciously trying to think about that song, but it's playing. So something in your brain is, firing along a certain pathway to create that noise in your head. And therefore, to me, it's like, well, then there are certain neurons that then link to, and I guess the image being like a keys on a piano, those neurons are like being pushed without you thinking about them. Well, same for the words. You're thinking thoughts that correspond to keys on the piano, but you're not actually having to hit those keys. All you have to do is say, I'm thinking about these things, and those keys get pressed as a almost as a byproduct, right? And like just the way, like, why can't your brain then just utilize those keys to speak to interface with you consciously directly? Like, to me, the brain is almost in two parts, the unconscious part and the conscious part. Why isn't there a connection between those? Why can't your unconscious subconscious brain, I said unconscious, but the subconscious brain, use what you've built to interface with the world, to interface with you, right? Like, to basically say, here I am pumping your heart, controlling your diaphragm so you breathe, so you don't have to think about those things. But hey, I just want to let you know that your kidney is acting weird. And I know that there are specialists that you can go see. So I just want to I want to give you the signal to say, kidney alert, kidney alert. And why can't it use the words based on the infrastructure it has around the nerves of the kidney to basically say, kidney, yellow alert. It's not quite red, but go get it checked up on. Or, you know, um, just whatever needs to be done internally. It would be interesting if there's a way to better interface with the subconscious mechanisms that could then utilize the infrastructure that you've created with words and language and memories and whatnot to better communicate. I don't know. Moving back to the book, caloric deficit, super interesting, right? Like, you don't have to cut 50% of your calories down, but like, again, just 10%, you get 10 more years. And if you're in a caloric deficit, you might be more lean and therefore more healthy to live those 10 years. So there's stuff like that. Then there are parts, and let me if I can find it really quickly, that talk about ATP production being exponentially, because it's a chemical reaction, exponentially impacted or affected by temperature at the point um, of like actually having the chemical reaction occur. And let's see if I can find it really quickly. Sensitivity to temperature is exponential. So all central features of life from gestation to growth to mortality are exponentially sensitive to temperature. Let me just turn the page. I think this is where it starts to actually say, for every 10 degrees Celsius rise in temperature, the production rate of ATP doubles. So at the point of where ATP is being produced and chemically reacted in, like in a cell, if you were to change that by 10 degrees Celsius, that would double the rate at which that reaction occurs. Consequently, a relatively small increase of only 10 degrees Celsius leads to a doubling of metabolic rate, and therefore a doubling of the rate of living. So if we break it down even smaller though, a modest 2 degrees Celsius change in ambient temperature leads to a 20 to 30% change in growth and mortality rates. This is a huge, and therein lies our problem. If global warming induces a temperature increase of around 2 degrees Celsius, which it is on track to do, then the pace of almost all biological life across all scales increases by a whopping 20 to 30%. Now, I think that should be tweaked just a little bit with an asterisk to say cold-blooded animals, because I think humans have a temperature regulation. So just because it gets warmer outside, and most of us live inside anyway, but like, even if we weren't, like, let's say like a mountain lion is outside constantly, he or she has a temperature control system because it's a warm-blooded creature, so it has a way to maintain its own homeostasis. But what I think the real thing is, cold-blooded animals that live in the ocean, if the water changes a certain degree, then their body temperature as a byproduct changes that amount. And I think a big thing we see, there's a couple articles that come out with, is like the Greenland shark, I think, can live like 500 years. The Greenland shark lives in like Arctic cold freezing waters, which then obviously decreases that body temperature decreasing its metabolic rate. So, and it actually says that, like, um, somewhere in the next few pages, like, if you could decrease your body temperature, then you would obviously extend your lifespan. And so just, you know, a, a completely independent source that kind of attests to that is the Greenland shark, where, yeah, it lives so long and lives in these freezing cold waters. Let's see if there's anything else in here really quickly before we move on. It's a really interesting book packed with just data. Um, Temperature we already saw. Anything else in here? I got some bookmarks. I'm just trying to get to them. No, that wasn't what I was wanting it to be. All right, well, we'll move on. We've talked about it enough. I'm gonna get brief water break, but yeah, I suggest, you know, picking it up, reading it. You can even cherry pick based on the chapters. Again, they're so easy to follow. The first chapter is kind of a synopsis for the whole book, and it has tons of data. So even if, you know, you just wanted to read that, like, it'd be worth it, because it would just introduce concepts that then you could pick and choose to, like, delve into at any given time. And it's just, yeah, again, it's got so much data. I wish he would make a podcast where, like, he provides weekly updates, or you know, a website where he posted them, or just writes a sequel, because it's just so much data, and that's what I appreciate. I hate when books are like a pamphlet with 400 pages of filler, and they just go into, like, now let me tell you about how I got involved in you know, birds. You know, when I was a boy, I saw birds flying around our house, and I thought, well, isn't that awesome? It would be so fun to be able to fly. And then and then it's like, bro, we didn't buy this book to hear about you. Like, we didn't buy this book because it was a biography. We bought this book because you promised to deliver on insights into, like, bird evolution, the evolution of feathers, you know, the hollow bone, the, you know, the various forms of birds, what makes the peregrine falcon so well adapted to be, you know, this dive bombing, fastest moving flying creature on earth. Like, you know, we want to read about what this book is called, you know, birds or whatever, and you're giving us fluff, and there is no fluff in this book at all. It is the Arnold Schwarzenegger steroided up Mr. Olympia, however many times he won, like, beefcake of a book. Like, there is no fat in this book at all, and that's what I love. So, you know, another reason that it's great. So let me get this water and let's move on to the next topic. Okay, so yeah, job start date was deferred. Without getting too much into the personal stuff, my grandfather and grandmother on my father's side aren't doing great. Well, my grandfather, he wasn't doing great, and then he passed away. So I went up to Southern Illinois for the funeral, and a lot of my family did too. And you know, it was a quick one. Like, I think kind of what happened was he had a tick infection. It's a brand new one in the area, but it went undiagnosed. It then spread. It affected his physical and cognitive abilities. He then fell and went to the hospital, and then like, basically things went into, like, a rapid decline from there. So cognitive abilities, like, certain days he wasn't able to open his eyes, he wasn't able to move certain, like, limbs, he wasn't able to speak. So things were, like, really scary. Then he would have better days where those things, and we, you know, oh good, he's getting better, and then kind of the next day, I think, from when he was getting better, you know, he, like, organ systems just started failing. You know, thankfully my mom was there, so she was able to, like, I guess, put me on speaker so I could say goodbye, because it did turn out to be, like, a final goodbye, which was, you know, sad. But it was very quick too, so it's kind of like, in a humanitarian perspective, it's like, well, at least he didn't get to suffer. At least he didn't have to suffer a long time. This all going on while my grandma, who has some form of like mid-tier dementia at this point, um, she fell and broke her femur at the hip socket. So then she had to go through surgery, and we're trying to figure out, now what we can do to help grandma because they're saying she won't really be able to go into like assisted living type situations because of her level of dementia. She's combative, um, or if you follow YMH, combative with the like nurses, and so she can't. She has to wear mittens that like fully cover her hands, which protect the people around her. But then, as things start to degrade, if that's a word, degrade. I don't know. Maybe she starts losing because she's not using her hands now, like things like that. And like obviously, the worst part of dementia is that you forget how to eat and swallow, and then um, that's kind of the last step because then. But so, yeah, they started saying if she needs to rehab her leg, but with her being combative, she won't get good treatment, and most places they get paid based on their success rate. So with her being combative, she might not even get like accepted, and then that makes things even harder. So it's tough. And as I was traveling, I guess when you're on planes, at least it's like the only time for me that I really watch like certain movies that I don't go see in theaters, and it's like, oh, that might have been good, but then years pass and like never seen it. So like one of those movies was The Arrival with Amy McAdams, I think is her name, and then Hawkeye, and it's the aliens come in these uh, black ovally thingies, and they're like I could pick it apart, but I think for what it was good. Like I didn't know anything about it except for like there were aliens that came, and she's a linguist, and they're trying to like be able to communicate because obviously these aliens are like peaceful. Otherwise, they would have just like come in the night and like started attacking, guns blazing. And they're trying to figure out how to interface with the aliens because they speak different languages, and she's a linguist, so she's trying to like teach them and learn what they're responding back with, and then yeah, spoiler alert for this really old movie, like it turns into a time travel type of movie, which you don't see coming. At least I didn't. And so that's what it was like. It was a pleasant surprise, and it was done in a very small time travel impact way, which I kind of like appreciated better. Um, there are things that I could pick at as far as like, why would the military ever use this linguist lady for this job? Like, no, they wouldn't have done that. Uh, these aliens, like they're all like, oh, they don't have like exhaust and no heat signature, no radio signatures, and like just their ship is like a completely closed, like looks like a floating river stone basically, and then like but like things are moving, so it's like, well, where's your energy source for that? Like realistically, like how is that floating? How is this door opening out of nothing? How is it powered? How is it moving? What material is this made out of? Why is there different gravity inside this ship? Which I guess is more of the black box of these aliens, which you don't really delve into, which I guess is okay. But then, like, um, the aliens themselves were just weird. What are they called? Like septopods or something? Seven-legged thingies. They looked like weird squid elephants. Like, you can't ever see them. Even when she's, like, kind of inside the ship, you don't really see them. So it's like, what? Really? What are these things? Like, these look weird. Um, but so there are like things that I could have like picked at, but just the fact that it was like a time travel movie with aliens, and the aliens just leave, and then she's the one that like saves the day. It was good. It was a good movie. I didn't see it coming. It was interesting, um, and there were definitely other movies that I put on that I was like, this is. I'm not even gonna like put the headphones in, just because this looks terrible. Um, Shout out to Monster Hunter apparently. But then I also watched on the way home the movie yesterday. And I'm not a huge Beatles fan. I really like Across the Universe, but I liked this guy and Across the Universe's versions of the songs better than the Beatles version. So like I just don't have enough musical appreciation for the Beatles because I think yesterday he was trying. Synopsis. He gets there's a power outage. The guy gets hit by a car. He's a failing musician, and then all of a sudden the Beatles don't exist, and so he starts writing all the Beatles songs to like put out, and then he becomes a huge hit because the Beatles songs are these huge songs, and then um, he kind of reveals like, oh, these are these songs I'm going to put out for free because they should be, and kind of walks away from it. But I think there were times when he was having trouble remembering the lyrics, and there would be like in the actual dialogue of like he'd hear something or talk to someone, and he'd hear like a lyric, and then that would trigger him to like, oh, okay. But I didn't know the lyrics of like all these songs well enough to like figure out like what was the prompt. Um, so yeah, it was a good movie. Um, wasn't for I think for someone that likes the Beatles, it would have been much better. But yeah, it was entertaining for a movie flight kind of movie. Um, oh, one thing I guess while at so those were like to and from grandma and grandpa's house. Um, there were a lot of people that showed up for the funeral. A lot of people that I didn't know really well. Friends, extended family. Um, like a lot of the extended family lives around the area. Some of them traveled to get there, but there were a lot of people, and it's like wow, like shows that Grandpa made an impact on a lot of people, which is good to see. Um, but before I go into like one Grandpa story, he always told like his highlight reel multiple times per visit, every visit. Um, it was interesting that a lot of us, there's like four main grandchildren. Um, I'm the youngest. We're standing at the very tail end of the like line where people are coming in and like talking to us, greeting us before the funeral service starts. And we're like, wow, there's a lot of people, and I don't think I know this many people, let alone that would come to my funeral kind of thing. And then we're like kind of tangenting off of like, well, yeah, I don't think I would want similar to like birthdays when people are around like singing to you, especially like in a restaurant. It's kind of like awkward. I don't think I would want a funeral like this where it's people come and gather, and it was pretty unanimous that we're all like, yeah, just not quite throw me in the street literally, which was said, just toss me out and let the vultures eat me. But like, yeah, just a shift in perspective of why spend all this money on all these things for obviously you're paying your respect, but like why do we need this big occasion with all this expensive stuff when potentially we could do it differently in cremation, or I think there are those videos with those teeth, those gear grinders that people throw like big old gummy bears into, or tires, or propane tanks, and it's like, does it crush? And like and then I mentioned, well, I just throw me in the wood chipper kind of thing. But just yeah, like I don't know, for our own cell, like our own bodies, it's like each of us kind of feels like the funerary service and industry isn't something that we want to be a part of. I don't know. Yeah, so that was interesting to like kind of unanimously see with my generation. Um, so yeah, Grandpa was a highly influential person, and a lot of people, felt the weight of his loss, and they came to pay their respects. That was good to see. Um, Moving from somber back to like different things. Those were the movies I saw on the planes. Uh, we also saw Thor 4 before I left, so I think I left Monday morning. I think we saw Thor like Sunday, so a bit of Quentin Tarantino out of orderness to this agenda, but um, I was a little concerned when I went into Thor 4 because we had just seen Everything Everywhere All at Once, which was an 11 out of 10, probably the best movie for multiple years to come, at least in my book. And then I had seen little thumbnails of like movie reviewers and still shots of the maybe a little clickbaity of a title where it's like Thor 4 worst Thor ever, Thor 4 set to lose money, Thor 4 not going to be able to recoup its budget, and Thor 4 like trigger warning, Thor 4 go woke go broke, or all these different things. And so I was like, oh gosh, like Taika Waititi, he can be kind of hit and miss. In Thor 3 he hit a great home run. I thought that was the best Thor. I really enjoyed it. It was really fun. The color, the tone, the Thor that he became, and the action and all that. And I thought it was really good. Thor 4 is, in my book, a 9 out of 10. And it's everything that I thought was great about Thor 3, polished and better. It was very funny. Great action. There was tons of action. And it was shot in a way where it was like very clear. None of that shaky cam, Jason Bourne, like fast moving, everything's a blur crap. It's like, no. When someone's moving fast, we're going to slow this down so you can see. And then when they hit, we're going to make things like ripple to show the weight. Boom. Boom. And like they did a really good job of choreographing the fight, but then videoing it from great angles so that you're always like seeing the whole fight. Because I get another thing I hate is like, if you're gonna fight, let us see the fight. And if you're gonna be an actor, you gotta learn the choreography so that you can do these things in like a fluid take, so that it's not choppy and then we're losing perspective because we're having to jump around over everyone's shoulder, and you're like, I give up. I can't see what's going on. This is annoying, kind of thing. So hats off for that. And there were surprises in the movie, and I gotta say, they did a great job. I hate when movie trailers show the entire plot of the movie in the trailer, and now I don't need to go see the freaking movie anymore because I just saw it in a 2-minute clip. And that's what I was worried about for this movie too. I thought I was about to see everything. Thank goodness most of the trailers that at least I saw were the first 5 minutes. And that's it. And you're like, yes, I have a whole movie now to be, surprised and pleasantly enjoying the novelty of, because I haven't seen it before. So they did that well, and I think all movies need to get with the program and do that rather than like some of these rom-com movies that my partner wants to see. It shows the whole like star-crossed lovers, and it shows side by side they're like walking out of a bagel shop, and just like one's a investment banker, one's a real estate broker or a florist or something, and it's like never destined to meet until one day, and then it shows like he jumps out in front of the car and saves the puppy, and it's like, oh my god, thank you, and it's like they fall in love, and like then it shows them moving in together, and like, but not without conflict. And then it shows their first fight, and then it's like, well, you said this, and I don't like your mother, and she's overbearing, and it's like, well, fine. They break up. I'm done. And it's like, what? And then it's like, but will they get back together? I'm so glad we got back together because I was in love. And it's like, no, why do you keep answering your own questions? Those are the questions the movie should be answering when we pay to see it. And it's like, why would I need to see that movie now? Because I just saw them getting together, what caused them to get together, what caused them to break up, and then what caused them to be back, the fact that they get together. And it's like, so yeah, it would be basically, to me, like showing a horror movie and showing how they defeat Freddy Krueger or defeat Jason or whatever. It's like, well, okay, then all the terror that I'm feeling if I go see this movie is just going to be immediately replaced with relief because I've already seen how they catch the baddie, how they defeat the baddie. Like you're spoiling your own movie. So, like, just stop doing that. Um, which Thor 4 did not do. So I would say, yeah, if you like Thor 3, go see Thor 4 because it was good. Um, so yeah, that was okay. So I'm gonna move quickly into thinking about thoughts out loud. I don't know if that's the same exact segment title. It might morph, but it's just thinking thoughts and thinking about thoughts, basically. So this was again like we were out for a walk. This was last night, so this was recent. But the ethical and moral dilemma that would occur from this scenario. So context. Okay. CRISPR has gone through many generations, many iterations, and they even did, I think, a CRISPR for humans. The guy was in China, and I think he got disbarred from his practicing license or whatever it's called. But his license revoked maybe is more. Okay, but let's take that. So we have gene editing in its very early stages compared to where we're going with this. I say early because we're gonna move into the future a little bit. Step, 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 step. CRISPR has been like perfected basically, and um, basically you can go in now, and here is the like world it becomes. So yeah, you can have a completely natural birth, man, woman, sperm, egg, no editing, birth. There's your 100% natural, all natural. Then there's going to be, you have sperm, egg from the couple. They're going to be sent to a lab. The lab is going to take it, it's going to process it, and it's going to say, here are all the outcomes and probabilities of what your baby could be. Here are the downsides, the defects, or the probabilities of disease or whatever. Here are the upsides. He can be potentially this tall, this smart, this attractive, whatever. And in the best scenario, this 1 in a million, he can be based on your parameters that the couple creates. Like, I'd like him to be tall and be handsome and be athletic and be as smart as possible. So it like takes those parameters and it's like, okay, in order to get those genes that would predispose this child to being that, you have a, let's say, 1 in a million genes. But with that, you can only hope, without creating negative side effects, you can only hope to get to 6'5" in height, and you can only hope to get to an IQ of X, and you can only hope to get to an attractiveness of let's say 9 out of 10 kind of thing. So that's scenario 2, where you basically are editing your own sperm and egg to get certain results. The third option is we've artificially created or found the perfect donors of sperm and egg that, and let's think about this from, I'm gonna have to tangent out, Pokemon standpoint. Pokemon have certain stat points in their HP, attack, defense, special attack, special defense, and maybe speed. I don't know how many there are. But if you maxed out the leveling of that Pokemon, you would get to a certain number if you added up all those stat points. That's to say that one Pokemon versus another Pokemon has more potential than another, right? So like we know this. That's why the starter Pokemon evolve twice. The third tier of that evolution is typically stronger than any, Pokemon that only has one evolution, a 2-tier, and therefore the total amount of stat points at the highest level that those two fully evolved Pokemon can get, the starter Pokemon or the doubly evolved Pokemon has more points. So it'll always be better than that one kind of like evolution kind of thing. And I'm generalizing, but just to get the point that there will be one, egg baby Pokemon that has more potential to get more stat points and reach a higher level than an equivalently leveled base different Pokemon that doesn't have quite as much potential. So, not beating around the bush, any normal person, me included, when I would be in this world looking to have a child, would then be offered the option. Well, sir, your baby has this probability of getting this. We can get it to there, but it's going to be at a disadvantage to anyone that uses our starter pack, our Adam and Eve starter pack, which we can manipulate with much easier, probabilities. And your max height was 6'5". Our max height is 7 foot with healthy outcome. Your muscle tonality, your predisposition to be like athletic, is, let's say, like an 8.5 out of 10. Pretty good. We can get you to a 10 out of 10. Your IQ is X. We can get to X plus 15. We can get to X plus 20. We can get to X plus 50. So, like, basically, what they're saying is, your offspring, we can do as much as we can to make it better, but it's never going to be better than the Adam and Eve offspring that we can create for you that other people also have access to, right? So let's summarize. We have option 1, fully natural. Option 2, natural augmented. And number 3, fully augmented, right? Well, in that world, so there's 2 different perspectives, right, in the sci-fi world. As a parent, do you disadvantage your child by choosing option 1 or 2, knowing that, let's say, even 50% of humans at this point are option 3, right? You're going to be shorter. You're going to be slower. You're going to be less smart at a maximum level. So therefore, your body and your brain are going to have to work between however much percent that you're at compared to them harder. And, do you, from the get-go and mathematically knowing now the disadvantages of your child, go with either option 1 or 2, or do you just advantage your child as much as possible so you can level the playing field? And then the reverse side of that coin, as a child, if your parents chose option 1 or 2, do you then resent them for having, we can now mathematically quantify it, like disadvantaged you as the child when the options were available to like give the greatest advantage? So that was like the ethical and moral discussion I was having with my partner, and like just seeing bouncing back thoughts kind of thing. But then I introduced, this could be a dystopian type of world, because I introduced the concept of like, well, obviously the disadvantages, the disadvantaged, the lower and middle class people obviously want to max out their offspring. So they're all going to sacrifice their own genes and their own, right to, give some kind of natural birth by then going with these Adam and Eve offspring. But it's only because it gives them a greater advantage to become successful and hopefully, not have to continue that. The problem is like these Adam and Eve, quote unquote, like genetic parents have no genetic tie to the the parents, their original parents. So after a few generations, you like the family lines of those people completely cut. Um, but the elite, who already have more advantage than what these genetic offspring could have because of their placement. They're sons of trillionaires. They're sons of empires. They're sons of these political powerhouses. What starts to happen is the elite don't even augment their own children. The elite basically become the normal, average looking Joes. Not even like average, they're chunky because they don't exercise, because they're so advantaged, they don't have to. Like they're somewhat they're average looking because they're not augmented. And yet they are the elite because they hold these positions of power. And so it's almost like a dichotomy of the elite get to look normal, almost at this point ugly, because the lower class, middle and lower class people have to try to equal the playing field, level the playing field by getting all these genetic advantages, sacrificing their lineage. And that's kind of like the setting of the world. I haven't thought of a plot for that kind of like book idea, but yeah, I just thought that kind of an interesting world that it could be possible kind of thing. All right, so that was the thinking about thoughts, the moral and ethical type of decisions you'd have to make. Feel free to leave your thoughts and we can continue it. I can expand on the universe created. But let's end with, there are two make it better movies that I need to get into. So let's get into that so we can start wrapping up. Make it better, proposal number 1. The Eternals movie. I liked The Eternals because it proposed ethical and philosophical problems to think about. You have these non-humans that come in and they figure out that their purpose is to basically farm this world so that it has enough sentient life to feed, I guess, this like Titan guy that lives in the planet, who will have to destroy the planet to emerge. And the whole purpose of this Titan that can come out of the planet destroying it will be to then spawn thousands of planets in the future. That's his purpose. So he kills one planet to then create life on thousands of planets. And if you just simplify it out, it's like basically kill one person to save 1,000, right? But these people, the Eternals, I guess, is what they're collectively called, they don't want to then sacrifice the one planet to create thousands of planets full of life in the future. They want to save this one, which is interesting because I think from a big picture perspective, most humans, adult humans, would say, without it being someone that they know that has to be sacrificed, would easily, in a very short amount of time, say, press the red button, we got to kill that person to save the 1,000. And there's even probably a proportion of some moral people would even, depending on who it is, sacrifice someone close to them. Well, let me put it before I get into that. They would sacrifice themselves to save that 1,000 if it were an option. So like, let me substitute in, I'll take the bullet, save the 1,000 people. I think a pretty decent proportion of people would do that. I think less they would sacrifice a loved one, like they were the one to pull the trigger basically to save that 1,000. There'd be less people doing that. I think there's just something about like, and I've talked about hostage situations before with my partner. It's like if you want someone to cooperate, you don't torture them, you torture their family. For some reason, people are much less likely to speak thinking, uh, you know, they could die a martyr. I just die and then I'm good. But as soon as someone gets hurt on your behalf, on their like on their behalf, people have a very hard time justifying that, and then they just break and then they speak. Um, so I think that kind of extends to this situation of people would they let someone close to them die to save maybe 1,000 randos, right? Like that's a harder decision that people would make, and I don't think a lot of people would make it. But that's that this whole discussion stems from something presented in the Eternals, right? So that's good. But their story is to fight these deviant creatures, these creatures that I guess somehow were sent by the same people that sent the Eternals, but they just don't follow protocol correctly. Maybe they start like attacking humans, and that's like detrimental to the purpose of, you know, farming the planet for intelligent civilized life or something. I don't really know why they do that, if they were sent by the same guy, but basically the Eternals are sent to kill all these creatures, and then their job is done basically 1,500 years, or however long it was, 500 years ago, so they just disband. And then they start coming back, and then they have to gather to fight them. But what happens is one of these creatures figures out how to like suck the life force out of the Eternals, and then gets more powerful. And to me, because that beast did that, I think 2 or 3 times, it's like, well then that's your antagonist. Your whole movie, that's who you've been showing as being the cause for conflict, right? Like the cause for conflict wasn't revealed that there was a giant titan in the core of the earth that was going to emerge soon that caused everyone to be together. It was that this beast came out of nowhere that they thought didn't exist anymore and killed one of them and got more powerful. That's what was the conflict that brought everyone together. And then they kept fighting them because it kept growing more powerful, right? Like that should have been then, and one of the scenarios would make it better. That should have been the story arc, is this thing keeps getting more powerful and more sentient by absorbing the life force of these Eternals. So you can go a couple directions with that. You have that via fight scene. Or you let that creature get sentient enough to say, hey, like, we don't have to fight. You guys know you're robots. I know that I'm this first generation creature, and do we both realize that what we're doing is farming this planet in preparation for its destruction? And so you either fight Galactus, I think it might have been, or whoever it is. You either try to fight Galactus, or you team up with these two people that have been fighting each other for so long. You keep them both in the story, and then you fight the Titan or whatever. I didn't like the internal like strife conflict thing between Icarus and these other people. That was dumb. I thought like he's just like, at least the way he was like acting, like directed to act, is like he's just like this emotional robot, and it's like I have no. And you don't know the extent of like power levels either. I was like, why do they all have just like one power? If you can make all of these things like basically as robots, like just give all of, like, why do you even need all of them? Just give one person all the powers, or give all of them all the powers, or what, you know, whatever. But like they basically built up this creature that became more powerful, more sentient, and it was about to kill Angelina Jolie's character, and then she just does this like, it's hard to even see. She just moves her hands, waves her hands like kind of above her head, like quickly in 1 second, and this thing like just falls into a million pieces, and he's dead. And it's like, oh well, that whole conflict for the whole movie is now resolved, but like if it were that easy to kill him, why did all these other people like it go so quickly? Like what the yuck? So it was a little like I don't want to call it quite a shamalama ding dong where it was like building towards something and it didn't go there, but it just didn't feel like on a lesser degree because it wasn't like a bait and switch. It was just you had been building to something and then you abruptly stopped that and moved into something else, and it just seemed a little weird. Like, do we really know the direction we want to go in with this movie, kind of thing? So like, because almost like those beasts were just introduced to introduce action scenes, something to fight, and then okay, well we don't need them to fight against them anymore, so let's just kill all of them, right? And then like moving on. So it was just almost like introduced to keep people that wanted to see action entertained until the very end when there would be internal conflict and they fight each other. And in that sense too, it's like, well, that seems like a cop out too. So like that's why I think you either have that beast grow more and more powerful and they fight and then it's over. It grows more powerful but then also smarter so they can rationalize and then figure out who the real enemy is. Or even like I would even accept the Goku Spirit Bomb method of we have to give this guy all of our power so he can combine into one entity and be stronger than all of us so that he can fight the Celeste or what Galactus guy, right? Like let them all if they want to, right? I think, and this is here's a philosophical scenario that they could have introduced that would be even better, right? If they're wanting to stop this giant Titan thing from emerging, destroying Earth so they can create thousands of more planets with life, then they should be willing to sacrifice themselves to stop it from happening. And that would be a good story arc. Meaning, the person they thought was they were fighting against is actually their savior, and they have to sacrifice themselves to make this savior strong enough to fulfill his purpose of stopping Galactus from doing this, if that's what they really thought was needed. If you really think you can't allow these Titan things to destroy one single planet to then create thousands of others, then you should be willing to sacrifice your own life to bring about that particular outcome. I think that would be a much better outcome. Again, on a philosophical level, this isn't my Earth because that's a fantasy movie. So I think you've got to go with big picture here and say, what is one planet versus 1,000 other advanced life, like, what was the word I'm looking for? Life populated planets. If you had a guarantee that 1,000 other planets would be formed by destroying your own with life on them that would then create intelligent life and fulfillment for those people, it's like you're so selfishly like denying those people from getting their fulfillment then. So like, yeah, but that's the way I think, you know, there are multiple alternatives. I think that one would have maybe been the best philosophical and best way to tie everything together. For the Eternals. It wasn't bad. It just, again, it had a minor shamalama ding dong effect of we were building towards something, we introduced these monsters, and then they weren't needed at all, and then it just came down to internal conflict amongst the Power Rangers, and then it was over. Like, and then that girl was strong enough to like turn the whole Titan into something else. I don't know, like, seems like it would have problems with like, oh, guess what now, like 90% of the core and internal organs of the planet are now this golden metal, and we can't, you know, like, what does that do to the core of the Earth, the heat source and the magma and the magnetic fields? And like it almost seems like that would be worse. Like, if you were to actually plot that out, like what she did probably just guaranteed that the planet would slowly die and there would be no life to offset it. So it's a net worse negative than had they just let the planet, you know, sacrifice itself to bring about this new entity that could spawn more planets with life on them. So it's like, if you thought this through at all, you would have tried to avoid that. Which, that's a brand new thought I hadn't even thought about. Like, that kind of seals the deal. That like, it was just a terribly executed and thought out solution to, oh, I'm a robot. So, like, oh, I'm an immortal robot with superpowers. Like, talk about, not being able to think logically once you figured that out. Okay, the one I'm most excited about, which I guess I don't have as much fleshed out like I do the Eternals, but the Bob's Burgers movie. Love Bob's Burgers, the TV show. It's funny, it's fun, they introduce songs, like, it's just a great time. Bob is a great, Linda, she's always the one causing conflict, I feel like, but like, Bob is such a good guy, he deserves a win. And we tried to watch it last night, we kind of fell asleep, but we had seen it before in theaters. And I just thought it kind of let me down. In the first Make It Better of, like, when I walked out of the theater, I was like, they could have almost just made like 3 or 4, episodes, or however how long, like, they could make them longer, like 30-minute segments instead of the 20 whatever because of commercial, but like, they could have made individual episodes and like maybe tied them together at the end, or just individual segments, like, and as long as those were funny, you could have been better than this movie. And I think rewatching the beginning, it starts off with there's no win that they can have. It's only about maintaining the homeostasis before the movie started. Meaning, the movie is based on Bob can't pay his loan, and he's going to lose his equipment for his restaurant, and basically lose his restaurant. And then there'll be no way to make money, and then, it just spirals, right? So that's like, you have such a slippery slope that you're about to slide down. You got to prevent yourself from falling into. So that's like, and then it gets worse and worse. So there's that. There's what's the other plot? There's like, I can't remember them all, but it's just like, then the hole breaks open and he just can't get a break, but it's just always like, it just felt like you're always losing. And even if you're gonna like resolve the conflict of this movie, you don't get off any better. You only stay the same. In which case, like, it's almost just, well, why do we watch it, right? There wasn't any growth or progression, kind of thing. Like, Louise is self-conscious and has anxiety about her ears because should she keep wearing them anymore? Is she a baby? Tina has her thing about being, I think it was like summer boyfriend and girlfriend or something, but like something about that with Jimmy Jr. So she's got these like anxieties going on. Gene has this instrument that no one likes. Aliens come in his little early movie fantasy where they tell him to stop playing it. Like, everyone is just on a down. And so, like, the whole movie is just, like, set on like, the first opening, like, those are the opening moments before I fell asleep. And I was just like, this is just sad. Like, I don't want to see Bob's Burgers sad movie. I want to see happy Bob's Burgers movie. And so, like, that's the first thing, is you got to change the whole plot so that it's like, we can get a win and be happy at the end. Like, you can't be as happy at the end of a movie because you prevented yourself from losing. That's like ending with a tie. Like in a sports game, like if you created a sports movie, football, soccer, tennis, whatever, hockey, Miracle. Well, I think we've all kind of heard and seen Miracle, the U.S. hockey team that beats in the Olympics to win gold, right? Well, what if that story had been, we're trying to overcome all the odds. We got this really tough love coach, and he's pushing us hard. And Quaker Ruzioni, Cal State, I play for the United States of America. And it's like, oh, inspirational. And at the very end, they tie. The first tie in Olympic history. We can't give out two golds, so each team gets a silver. And it's like, if that's how the movie had ended, there would have been like just so much, like let's say it wasn't based on a true story or whatever, but like it wouldn't be an inspiring story because there wasn't a win. Our protagonists, our team, hadn't actually accomplished what they were set out to do. They were supposed to win. That's why they're struggling and grinding and fighting. And the same thing here with this Bob's Burger movie. If we end on a tie, then we haven't really seen anything. We haven't really gone through and like been the best we could have been, kind of thing. Um, but yeah, so that's got to change. And what I thought last night should have been something of like the plot is there's the I think for Hulu promo, but it's also on YouTube. There's a song that they released that seems to be cut out of the movie, and it's the best song in the movie. It's a talent show, and it's like the kids are up on stage, and you gotta check it out. It's just, I don't know, like Bob's Burgers Butt Fever. Pause this, go listen to it. It's the best song of all of the Bob's Burgers series. And it's so good and it's long enough, I think it should be what you ride or die on. It's the hill you die on. As a movie maker, someone should have figured out that that's the best song. We don't cut it out. We build the entire story, either the finale around that song, or we thread that through the plot so that you finally hear the full song at the very end. And what I mean, let's break this down. The song has multiple parts. The song starts off as like an improv conversation. Then it builds into them singing with Teddy helping them with the speaker. So that's another part. Then it moves into like individual rap verses. That's a third part. Then they run off stage and the band gets involved. A fourth part. Then they come back and then they sing a whole different part of the song with all the different components combined, but like new words. So a fifth part at least. You could build a movie around discovering all those parts and getting all those people together for this big concert. And that's the concert Gene was trying to put on, basically. And the movie, Gene wants to be a part of this concert at the Wonder Wharf before it gets demolished or whatever. And, it doesn't go as well, and it doesn't go, like, he has a hard time getting in. So, like, his whole plot should be figuring out and discovering all these different, like, what are the lyrics? How do we get people involved? How do we, like, get the music? And all these, and, like, what it should have been is them discovering like the words, them discovering like they can get the band involved, how they got Teddy involved. Like what it should have been is it starts off with a wacky animation type and all these different things, and it's like a 20-minute mini episode of this movie. And like people are behaving differently, people start sounding funny in different moments, and then basically the title scene finally, after 20 minutes of title scene, finally comes in. Bob's Burgers movie. And everyone, Gene, Luis, Tina, Linda, Bob, Teddy, Mort, Felix, I can't remember his real name, but like Mr. Fish Odor, they're like all these people are in the restaurant and they're all circling around, and Gene has been telling the story of how things went, and everyone's like, no, that's not how. And then you get someone else to tell a story, so then you switch over to maybe Mort. And so Mort, because everyone's envisioning the story he's telling, it's like black and white horror story, but it's like a fun, pleasant story because Mort is a happy, nice guy. So it like doesn't, but like the tone, you could get to shift the tone and the style completely because he's telling a short story, and then someone else comes in. Like, we don't really get to hear Bob or Teddy tell stories. So Teddy tells a story, and he's animated as this Greek chiseled god with this long flowing hair, and he's got this big hammer like Thor, and you get to see kind of what it's like inside of his head. And so as he's telling his story, people start butting in because they're like, I can't take anymore. Like, this isn't how it is. And so you get then Mr. Fischoeder interjecting the like correct parts of the story. And this is what was happening on the other side of, where you were looking that way, I looked this way, and then I saw this thing. So he's adding details, and then Linda's adding details. So you don't spend the entire movie maybe on individual segments with different styles, but you introduce styles because we get the point. We've seen Gene's rendition. We've seen maybe one other person you can pick, and Mort, because we don't get to see him. And then we start with the third, Teddy, and we start merging all the other people as they cut in. Then, once we get a sufficient backstory of like why is everyone like arguing at the store, then we get caught up to the present time. Everyone gets all the information they need, and then they move forward. Like, okay, we hit the present moment. Everyone needs to like ready, break. We break out of the huddle. Everyone has the information they need. Then they go do their certain things, and they catch the bad guy, or they solve the mystery, or they do the thing, and then there's the talent show at the end. And I think that would have been so much more fun. Like, because to me, some of the best episodes are the ones where like people are telling stories and they're just goofy stories, and they introduce all these different name puns and all these different movie lyric or music lyric puns, and they introduce wacky songs, and they introduce like scenarios where they're outside of their little town. They're drawn differently. Their color scheme's different, and like that's the best because it's like we've seen the universe as it is, and now we get to build outside of that universe based on what we know of these characters, and like we get to see inside their mind, and their storytelling is great. And so I say you ride or die, you die on that hill, because some people might not like that as much, but like to me that would be a better way of making a movie. You break it down into different stylized segments so that you can show all these different diverse things and make it as fun and diverse as possible, and then you bring it all together. You interweave all these threads of all these stories together, and then that song again has been threaded through. Like you've been hinting at like Jimmy Jr. can't come to school one of these days when Tina wants to give her little what was it called, the necklace thing, the bracelet away, and she calls him and he's like, I can't come to school, I have a fever, and she's like, gosh dang it, I can't see that juicy butt, the butt has a fever. And Gene hears it and he's like, wait, butt has a fever? Well, I can't believe it. And then he's like, who really can't believe it? His pants. And so that like was what starts this butt fever like piece. And then there's a talent show. What are we going to perform for the talent show? And they haven't been rehearsing, and just like you start introducing all these things, and you build up so that this final performance is this big celebration. It's like the kids pulled off the best song ever, and it was because of the help of these different people, and you saw how they got involved and roped in, and like and the song is happy, which again I don't think really fits the current movie, because the current movie isn't really a happy story, isn't a happy mood. And and another part right at the beginning of the story, the first song basically is like, today's going to be the sunny side of summer or whatever, we're going to get the bank loan, he's going to eat this burger that I'm preparing, the bank loan officer, and he's going to say yes, I can give you an extension. And they're singing and they're going over, and of course the first thing he said no. And so you just keep getting lower and lower, and it's a bummer of a tone. So you rather than doing that, you make it fun, you build in the story as you go, you make things intertwine, interweave, and at the very end you have this amazing climactic music moment where everyone in the auditorium, you included as the audience viewer, but you're like, this is a great song. We get to hear this great song that has been and components and pieces been discovered, been put together, and now we see the final product, and it's this amazing thing, and everyone agrees that it's amazing, and you get all the cast involved, and I just think that would be so much of a better, happy ending where you don't have to dig yourself out of a hole. It's just events are happening, and then you, whatever the conflict is, and maybe I can revisit it, but it's just like you end on a very fun, happy win for the family, for Bob, for Bob's Burgers. So that's how I think the Bob's Burgers movie should have been. Um, and, it just, it was a little disappointing because I liked the show so much that there just didn't seem like there was a lot of big hits, big wins in the actual movie. So with that, make sure you click it or you'll get a ticket. Subscribe to all of the best subscription services out there, Hulu included, because that's where you can watch Bob's Burgers. Make sure you like things in general. Just find out what you like, and explore those paths better. Donate to me money that I can spend on things that I like, because as we know, there's nothing better than liking the subscriptions that we have by paying them money so that they can be happy. And with that, just make sure you donate a lot of money, because as we know, more money, more happiness. So hopefully we can keep doing this. I'll keep trying to put these out. Art again will be maybe a little bit delayed in its future batches, but hope you have a good day, good week, and do me a favor.